WrestleMania 1 is very magical in a lot of ways. It's the reason why we have WWE nowadays. It launched everything. Before we talk about WrestleMania 1, I think it's appropriate to talk about the build up to WrestleMania to kind of paint you guys a picture of how this thing all started. You know, we started from the bottom, now we're here. Well, we're going to talk about a little bit about Vince McMahon Sr. We're going to talk about Hulk Hogan. We're going to put those two together, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the build to WrestleMania and WrestleMania itself. So sit back, relax, go get some popcorn. Try to get yourself through this video as best you can because it can't just talk about the card. You got to definitely talk about the build up. So before we do that, got to introduce you to my dog. Uh, he's 10 weeks old. His name is Leo. And he is taking a nap. Say what up, Leo. What up? That's probably his second nap today. There you go. There you go. That's him and his friends. Must be nice. Taking 12 naps a day. Um, okay, so just to start off a little bit, I'll go as quick as possible because I'll go as quick as I can. Uh, we got to talk about Vince McMahon Sr., obviously the father of Vincent Kennedy McMahon, born on July 6, 1914. He's best known for running the Capital Wrestling Corporation, later renamed as the WWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, then WWF, World Wrestling Federation, and now World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. So Vince, he was born in Harlem, New York. He had two kids, Rod McMahon and Vince McMahon, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Um, Vince saw a potential growth in pro wrestling uh, following World War II, especially with the development in television. So um, he wrestling began to dominate in the 50s and 60s. The nation's most populous area, the Northeast, his control is primarily Baltimore, New York, and New Jersey. In 1955, McMahon began airing his matches on TV on Wednesday nights on the Dumont network. So he was getting that thing going. So now we're going to switch, since he was starting to get this thing going, before we talk about how he actually sold it to his son, we got to talk about Hulk Hogan real quick. Hulk Hogan, just a regular guy, man. Um, in like 79, 80, somewhere around there. Actually, Terry Funk introduced Hogan, or Terry Bollea, to Vince McMahon Sr. And Vince was really impressed with Hogan's charisma and his physical stature. So McMahon wanted to use an Irish name, hence giving Bollea the last name Hogan. And he wanted to dye Hogan's hair red. Hogan had said, "Hey, look, man, my hair's falling out, so I'll just be a Irish blonde." So there was no dyeing Hogan red. What's up, buddy? What do you see? So Hogan wrestled his first match in November 17. Then he made his first appearance at MSG. He beat Million Dollar Man with a bear hug, if you can believe that. Hogan winning without using the leg drop. If you had the 24-inch pythons, why would you use the leg drop? Wouldn't you use the sleeper hold or the bear hug? Never really understood that, but hey, what do I know? It worked. So, um, hence Vince is a genius. So Hogan, after that, Hogan was paired off with Classy Freddie Blassie. So he was, during his initial heel run in the WWF, he was paired off with Classy Freddie Blassie. After that, they went to New Japan Wrestling around 80 to 85, somewhere around there. After that, during the AWA, he filmed Rocky 3, and this was against McMahon's wishes. And Hogan made his debut in the AWA, which was owned by Vern Gagne. Hogan started the AWA as a heel. That didn't last long because the AWA fans fell in love with Hogan's presence, and Hogan then became the top face of the AWA. He battled the Heenan family and Nick Bockwinkel. So, excuse me. After that, Vince Sr. sold the business to his son, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Vince Sr. had passed away back in May of '84. He was 69 years old due to pancreatic cancer. So he sold the business to his son in '82. And I remember his son said in Sports Illustrated back in '91, had his father knew what he was going to do, he never would have sold it. Hence, Vince began this competitive tactics. He bought everybody out. In the United States at that time, everybody was territorial. You had your WCCW, you had your Florida, Mid Atlantic. Everything was territorial. You had Stu Hart's Federation in Calgary. Vince bought everybody out and just began this big machine, the WWF. And he had quickly persuaded Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, to leave Vern Gagne and join the WWF. So Vince was like the Eric Bischoff back then. So after purchasing the company from his father in '82, Vince had plans to expand the territory in a nationwide promotion, and he handpicked Hulk Hogan to be the company's showpiece attraction due to recognition and charisma. So we're right now we're in like '84. So Vince McMahon Sr. has passed. Hogan has left AWA for WWF. Bob Backlund is the WWF champion at the time. He's held the belt for a number of years. He's getting jumped by the Wild Samoans back in January of '84, January 7th of '84. Hogan makes a save. Bob Backlund says, Hogan is a changed man. He's a great man and he's changed his ways. And he's not going to have classy Freddie Blassie around. 3 weeks later, Hogan won the WWF Championship from the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden by via pin. So, actually, too, a lot of people don't know this, but Hogan was a last-minute replacement to the Sheik. The Sheik's original opponent was Bob Backlund. So Hogan beats Sheik. He's actually the very first man to escape the camel clutch, which was the Iron Sheik's finishing move. the Iron Sheik actually used that move to beat Bob Backlund to win the championship. So they're really just Hulk Hogan's launched. You're the first person to get out of this finishing move. You beat the Iron Sheik for the championship, and you win it in Madison Square Garden. I'd say you're pretty much launched. Also, too, the backstory to that is that Bob Backlund had refused to let Hogan win the title from him. He was demanding that any wrestler, um, he would not lose the title to. He only wanted to lose the belt to someone that had a legitimate wrestling background. Obviously, you and I know Hulk Hogan really isn't considered a wrestler. He was an entertainer. So he had about three moves and it's over. So hence, Backlund drops the strap to the Sheik, the infamous Sheik of the Camel Clutch, and Arnold Scullin throwing the towel in. And then he dropped it to Hulk Hogan 3 weeks later. So, all right, not 3 weeks later, but years later. So that was that. Immediately after the win, also too, before we get to that, the Iron Sheik won the title from Backlund first, and then dropped it to Hogan. This was mostly made, however, not to make two faces face each other at the time. So it was it was the fact that Bob Backlund was kind of he was a champion for a long time, and I think maybe his character was kind of run down. So two things: he didn't want to drop the strap to Hogan, and you had to put this strap on Hogan somehow. They didn't want two faces to face each other at the same time, so that's what happened. Sheik drops it to Hogan, and that was that. Proclaiming Gorilla Monsoon, saying Hulkamania is here. So then we get to WrestleMania. Oh, excuse me, but before we do that, we actually need to build it a little bit more. WrestleMania during the 1980s. So now Vince McMahon has taken over, heavily promoting this. Um, Pretty much the WWF's main competition was Jim Crockett's promotion. So McMahon countered Jim Crockett's successful Starrcade. Starrcade was WrestleMania, was their version of WrestleMania. So to counter Starrcade, which began airing in '83, they created WrestleMania. So how'd they do that? Vince began cross promoting with MTV. They had a lot of celebrities involved: Muhammad Ali, Liberace, Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper was like the Taylor Swift or Nicki Minaj at the time. I mean, she was red hot. You had to get some kind of celebrity involvement, get other people talking besides the wrestling world. Once you get MTV talking, and you're good, and then you got the boxing world involved. So, um, also too, they had two events leading up to WrestleMania one. One was held back in July of '84. That was called the Brawl to End It All. Then they had one month before WrestleMania. That was February of '85. The War to Settle the Score. That was Hogan and versus Mr. T. That was a singles match. Hogan winning by DQ. In the months though leading to the first ever WrestleMania, Piper began airing a segment called Piper's Pit. He had Jimmy Superfly Snuka on there. Piper had grabbed a coconut and smashed it over the head of Snuka. If you haven't seen it before, go ahead and YouTube it. It's pretty hilarious. Then he was on Piper's Pit again. He had recruited Cowboy Bob Orton as his bodyguard. Um, Cowboy Bob Orton is actually the father of Randall Keith Orton, or Randy Orton. And he actually spoke, he wasn't actually a big fan of the rock and wrestling connection. So he wasn't a big fan of it He wasn't very envious of it, which led to a confrontation with Hulk Hogan, which then led to the war to settle the score. Um, Also, too, leading up to WrestleMania, Hogan had appeared on what's called Hot Properties. This was 4 days prior to WrestleMania, where he actually put the host Richard Belzer into a front chin lock. When you're putting somebody in a front chin lock, you are cutting off the flow of blood to the brain. Well, Richard, in this hold, Richard actually fell to the floor. He was unconscious and he began to bleed profusely. So, this injury required 8 stitches, and Belzer actually sued Hogan for $5 million, but they eventually settled out of court. And then the night before WrestleMania, Hogan and Mr. T hosted an episode of Saturday Night Live to help get this thing launched. So they did a lot of things to get this thing going. Hence, all that build. So we talked about WrestleMania. Excuse me, we talked about Vince McMahon Sr. We talked about Hulk Hogan and the AWA and how he was a heel and his differences with Bob Backlund, how he won the title. We talked about the build up now. Hence, WrestleMania, taglined as the greatest wrestling event of all time. This was held on March 31st, 1985. You had about 19,000 people in attendance. This was from Madison Square Garden. Your commentators for the evening were Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. And then your interviewers were Mean Gene Okerlund and Lord Alfred Hayes. The special guests, Rockettes, Liberace, Muhammad Ali, and yeah, the Rockettes. I said that, yeah. The special guest referee for the main event was Muhammad Ali. The timekeeper for the main event was Liberace. The special guests for the main event were the Rockettes. So let me clarify that for a sec. Just to run down the card real quick for WrestleMania, you had 9 matches, so this thing was stacked. Uh, this is the very first match ever. Tito Santana defeated the Executioner by submission. The Executioner was actually Playboy Buddy Rose. King Kong Bundy defeated Special Delivery Jones. He squashed him in 24 seconds. Ricky Steamboat over Matt Bourne. David Sammartino and Brutus Beefcake double DQ. Um, Junkyard Dog beat the Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine by countout. I'm not sure why they didn't give JYD the belt. He was over. Whatever. Nikolai Volkov and Iron Sheik beat the U.S. Express, Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda. Mike Rotundo, better known as IRS or Wall Street from the NWO. So there was a tag team title switch. Wendy Richter defeated Leilani Kai. And your main event, the tag match, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T defeated Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. So, and after that too, it was a success. This was a really big risk for Vince McMahon. You are risking everything, and it paid off. I mean, you had 19,000 people in Madison Square Garden. The event was viewed by over 1 million fans through closed circuit television. It was the largest showing of an event on closed circuit TV in the United States at that time. It was the start of the rock and wrestling connection era, which brought wrestling and the music industry together. So I really love this show. I mean, to grade this show, I would give it an A or an A plus. I mean, with everything that happened, with the risk involved, you've never done this before. You've had celebrities involved. You're on You're on cable. You're on Richard Belzer. You're on Saturday Night Live. You got celebrities involved. You have two shows, uh, and then this show was actually a success. It was awesome. It was great. One of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. And when you have something successful like WrestleMania 1, you have WrestleMania 2. So that will be coming up obviously after this. So stay tuned.